is a discussion of the clock tower. So nice segue by Sam. And I don't know, is Jim, are you, and I see Kristen, and I think Justin kind of said at our last weekly meeting, he was bailing out and deferring to you. You know, that's okay. We won't tell him, but
That's
you were
right.
the one with all the information anyway. So
You got it. You got it. So, yeah, whenever you want me to jump in, there were two items, Mr. Chairman, that we had to on our list to present with you tonight. The first of which were two freestanding signs that we took a look at and we're vetting with the working group over the last couple months. One of which identifies the gymnasium entry on the north side of the building. On the opposite end of the building, on the south side, it identifies the Performing Arts Center as two freestanding signs. So we have that to take a look at tonight if you wish. And we also have obviously the clock tower, which we want to focus on tonight, which is the main reason for the presentation tonight.
Yeah, so why don't we, the freestanding signs are not on the agenda, but are not subject to any discussion or voting. So I think we can quickly do an update on that. If Kristen, if you have visuals, and I'll kind of frame it, to how we get to this point with these this component of the job. The original design of the building had banners on the side on the north and south end of the building that identified both the athletics. Actually, I think they both just said East Providence Townies. I don't know if they identified the. In any event, they were fabric banners, and as we discussed to the class, there's a weekly team that meets every Tuesday morning, and we discuss certain things. And this piece came up as we were deciding how we wanted to handle that project and how we wanted it to look. And we decided ultimately that there was no long-term solution that met our liking to have a banner on the side of the building. So then we went to another design that we saw. Well, yeah, most of us saw it down at another school that AIT had done with the freestanding metal sign. So we went through some of those discussions, different ideas, and I see Justin's here. So I guess you did join us. So I was. Yep. I thought we were going to leave it to the brains of the operation, Kristen, but I kid. But anyway, so AA3 is going to show us the latest design of these towers based on the feedback that we gave them. So I will kick this back to you, Justin.
Yeah, well, you just basically said my intro, so I'm just going to turn it over to Kristen.
And I have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize to admit I am not able to share my screen. It says host is disabled participant sharing.
Ben, can you change that or?
Yep, that should. Let's see.
So AI3, you have James, Jordan, Justin, and Kristen, and Justin and Kristen have been instrumental on our weekly meetings as we go through different design components. With Jim kind of got us to this point, and now the details of it just makes sense. I think, not to speak for you, Jim, right, but that your team, those that are kind of dealing with the nitty gritty details that we're throwing back and forth. Kristen and Justin have been available to go to work with us on a weekly basis, and then some. So, Kristen, I think you're all set now.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So sharing, you could just share a screen or a tab. You wouldn't be able to share the whole screen.
It says when I click the share screen that host disabled participant screen sharing, and that has not updated.
Somebody passed the host to you. Could you pass it back to me, Kristen? I'll see if I can rectify that for you.
How do I do that?
Under the participant view, if you click the more, you can say set as host.
I'm sorry, I don't see that option.
Nate, it's still Ben, it's still at me as host.
I have several co-hosts, but
oh, you do? Okay, all right.
Yep, the Kristen accidentally got set as the original host.
Gotcha. Sorry.
So, cool.
Here we go.
All right.
Can
Looks
everyone
like
see
you got
that?
that up. Yes,
Yep.
we can.
See it.
Okay, great. So as Joel mentioned, we originally had the fabric banners, and those have been replaced with this freestanding sign. Not only did it improve the design intent, but it also was able to move the sign to a more visually apparent location on the site. These signs are now used to help direct the users to the side entry doors for athletics and performing arts. The design was developed using the same LED strip lighting as the landscape features, and you will see this lighting again when we review the proposed clock tower options. The monumental sign that Joel mentioned is this one at the Plymouth South High School, which was used as a precedent example for configuration and scale. We also referenced the new East Providence High School with their columns and piers and the facade materials and proportions. As Joel mentioned, we have two sites for these, one at the athletics north end of the building and one at the performing arts south end of the building. We have shifted these out to the sidewalk at the corners to allow them to be more visual apparent upon entry, as well as using other site wayfinding to direct users to either end of the building for either athletics or performing arts. The graphics for these signs were designed to incorporate the triangle grid theme, which is used throughout all of the interior building to help us with a cohesive design. We also incorporated large cutout letters. These will be laser cut out of the sign, and you'll see how that detail works later. So the overall sign is, the bottom is the same split face CMU as the building with the precast concrete top to match the building water table. The 9-foot 8-inch height of the base aligns with the height of the split face at the adjacent stair facade and discourages students from climbing. Extending from the base is a square steel tube profile with a chamfer at the top, and this is to help for water shedding and to discourage use as a bird perch. The sign above the base is a backlit metal panel with large metal profile EP logo at the top. The backlit design would allow for the cutout letters in the metal panel to glow at night. This approach uses the CHIPS dark sky compliant and avoids the need for any visible light fixtures. The lighting approach gives the sign a dynamic design with one look of the graphics visible during the day and another look of the glowing letters in silhouette at night. The sign at the north end is for the athletics entry adjacent to the gym. The location is centered in the circular portion of the sidewalk, so the sign is visible proud of the new building corner. The performing arts end has a tighter drive to the corner of the building, so the sign is located closer to the stair corner on a smaller sidewalk circle adjacent to the path to the performing arts entry. So those are the two freestanding signs. Were there any questions or comments?
Looks, I like it. I like and I appreciate the redesign. So I will defer to members of the building committee. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Joel, this is Nate. Sorry for signing on late. Is Bob Wagand on?
I have not seen him on. I did talk to him. We did a walkthrough Friday, and he joined us. So we did discuss this, and he, was in favor of the idea.
Okay.
He thought it was a great idea. Talked about this and the other item, the clock tower item as well. Not to speak for him publicly, but I believe I'm speaking accurately. And Kristen, I see and thank you and Justin for the performing arts side, moving that forward.
Mhm.
So can I assume that we've kind of cleared that, utilities and so forth, that will work, or is that still being finalized?
That is correct. We have coordinated the utilities. We've adjusted some site lighting and readjusted the planting of the trees so that everything remains on site, nothing is lost. It's all been adjusted to allow for the visibility and location of the sign.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one quick question there with regard to the performing arts side. Is that full curbing around there, or does that sidewalk go right into the street, if you will?
I believe the sidewalk is just an extension of the sidewalk that would attach to the sidewalk that's there. But as far as the sidewalk, the curb to the street,
Yeah, that's a curb right there.
I believe so. There's a ramped entry at about this location.
Yep.
So the sign is just past where you have the ADA accessible slope.
Okay, yeah, I just asked a question in case, winter comes, somebody with a plow comes along and knocks that thing down, and then we're building all over again.
Any other-
Joel,
Yes,
I'd like to
please.
say that I'm happy with the height of it. That idea of not allowing it to become a seat is a good one. Students will try to find a way. Yeah, but and using the split face blends in with the building very well. I'm happy with this design. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. And,
Can you just go back to the landscape plan for a second?
Do you want to see the overall, or was there a certain
Yeah,
engine you were
If
looking
you
for?
would, the overall one. That right there. While they're not big items, there's no concern with the balance, the visual balance of where one is out further than the other. On the architect's part.
From my standpoint or from the committee?
Right. From your standpoint, I trust your eye.
I don't believe so. I think you're never going to see the building perfectly in elevation where you would necessarily notice that one has a slightly different relationship. The drive and the landscape already is different on both ends of the building, so that the sign then has an appropriate response to that landscaping that's already there.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And for the other members that haven't seen the previous designs, there was a lower split face with some PVC, and but again, from a durability standpoint, the heighting of it, I agree with Manny on this height, the split face being at full height. And this picture doesn't do it justice. The other rendition really kind of, if it's going to look anything close to that, which most of this project has pretty much resembled these renditions. I'm very, very happy with that. Superintendent Sandy, Tony, any thoughts or comments?
Well, it's certainly a Talbot's budget rather than a Target budget, so thank you. Yes, I fell in love with them when I went to see Plymouth South, and after we decided not to have the banners hanging down, I asked if we could, look into this. Because Manny, didn't you go to Plymouth South and visit too? And Joel went up there too.
Yes, yes.
Very impressive when you walk into the front of the building and see these signs, isn't it?
Yes, everything about Plymouth South is impressive.
Yeah.
Could I ask Tony, that's not going to present a snow removal problem, is it?
No.
Yeah, I couldn't get unmuted. No, not at all. There's enough distance. That was originally going to be grass where it is right now. So it's not affected. And the one to the left, there's enough open space for us to use a small piece of equipment. And that's our game plan for the new sidewalks. We're not going to be putting big plow trucks on it. So we'll be using smaller pieces of equipment to plow all that area. And I really like the height, just like you said. We're not going to have kids climbing up on top of it, and not having the external lighting where it could be broken by somebody, but having the lit letters internally is really going to be helpful for us.
Thank you, Tony.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, guys. We can move right into the clock tower presentation, and I'll kind of bring us, if you don't mind, I'll bring us up to speed on this. So move right into the clock tower presentation.
Joel, if I could have a moment.
I'll kind of bring. Oh, yes, yeah, please, Mr. Wagen. Us up to speed on this. So move right into the clock tower presentation.
Joel.
Still a delay on audio. Oh, yes, yeah, please.
Bob, can you mute up, please? Thank you, Bob.
So go ahead, Bob. You have a question though. See if we can work this out.
I'm getting a lot of audio back and forth, and thank you for letting me get back into this meeting. But comments, Joel, I could hear them all, but I couldn't see you. In any case, I'm getting a lot of audio back and forth, and thank you for letting me get back into this meeting. But comments, Joel, I could hear them all, but I couldn't see you.
Bob, it appears you have the live stream open on another tab. You might want to see if you can close that out. Bob, it appears you have the live stream open on another tab.
Now we're all frozen.
No, we're good.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're just
Is Bob
waiting.
frozen?
We're just waiting to see if Bob can find the rogue tab that's causing the echo. Usually that's what it is.
He's got another tab running the meeting.
I was
Right,
watching
that's it.
from the other tab, and I forgot to shut off the other tab.
There you go.
It's
There you
all
go.
good.
Thanks. Good. Sounds good, Bob.
You know, these old guys, every once in a while, they get it right. In any case, first of all, with regard to the banners, I think the banners, are the design and the height and everything else that Manny and everybody else talked about is appropriate. There was one thing that only concerned me, and that was, I think it was, someone mentioned about maintenance plowing and damage to the base of the units. And I'd just be careful of where they are presently sitting. They're a little bit close to the edge of the curbing. And so I think you need to be careful as to making sure you get the proper setback, because when they are plowing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, those sidewalks, and they keep on whacking it and bumping it, you're going to have to be repairing it. So I would suggest that the architect just look at the placement to be sure there's adequate distance around it to prevent it from being damaged during the winter storms that we normally have. Other than that, I think they look fine.
Thank you.
Clock towers.
And I think that'll be something, for, our overall plan has to be pretty solid as far as, what equipment and where, how we're going to maintain this piece of property. So thank you, Bob. So nothing else on that. We can speak to the clock tower. So kind of to tell everyone how we arrived to this point. We started out with this project, building a new high school, and right off the bat, we were value engineering things out of the budget. So approaching the clock tower, that was always a priority. That it's a symbol of the high school. It's on yearbooks and even the referendum logo for this project here. So there was a commitment by the building committee to honor that and to make sure that this site maintained the clock tower. We, as things went down the road and our budget was looking good, then it became apparent that we could start to look at replacing this 1999 rendition of the Town Clock Tower with a clock tower that matched the new building and actually kept accurate time. We first looked into the idea of refacing the old, attaching basically the same materials that are going into the new building so that it wouldn't stand out and that it would match and be consistent. Unfortunately, even though it was only back in '99, the structural drawings of that clock tower do not exist or have not yet been found. So it would require quite a bit of research and kind of, I don't want to say demo, but we'd have to dig into that structure to see how it's built and to see if it could withstand any additional materials to be placed on it and so forth. And in addition to that, it was going to cost us roughly, not quoting anybody, Sam or our AI3 team, but anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 to build a retaining wall to protect it. So that's where we left this clock tower as a $300,000 to $400,000 expense to the project to protect it with the retaining wall, and we put this piece aside. We now are at a point where we're comfortable, and we feel like we can kind of finish the project off and deliver to the community and future students a clock tower that will resemble their new building, new campus, and kind of fit in line and just be fitting for what we're trying to do. AI3 with this piece, you get a lot of teasers with options up there. So we started out with about 5 renditions, and we narrowed it down to 3. These are not any of the 3. Well, at least one maybe, I can't really remember, but definitely the one at the top that is not, but it's a nice teaser. So from there, I will go to the AI3 team to move it forward and get us to the options that we are looking at. So we considered design options to ultimately be cost out for us to consider, as well as location options. And the location options was probably the easiest part of the decision, but we'll speak to how we arrived at that piece. So a lot of words, but I'll pass it on to you now. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Joel. As Joel mentioned, we've been working closely with district leadership. We had 5 options originally and have whittled that down to 3 finalists, which we'll review tonight. We start with what our design inspiration was, which included the facade proportions and materials from the new East Providence High School, the existing clock tower, some precedent higher education clock towers, and we also used some of the previous studies that we had done for the East Providence clock tower over a year ago to influence and inform these new options. Again, as Joel mentioned, we had reviewed multiple sites on the building site, but the clear consensus and the best location was to locate it where the existing clock tower is, but since we are adding a new one, we were able to pull the topography up to get rid of those retaining walls, which would be needed in order to keep the existing clock tower. Option 1 is a new tower clad in the materials of the new building and is designed to be the most inspired by the original tower. This option is the exact same height as the existing and uses the chamfered triangle shape and plan, similar to your existing clock tower. But the shape has been rectified to be more symmetrical in plan. The split face base matches the new building, and the mountain cedar color fiber cement lap siding is used to hug the tower on the back and around the sides. The white granite colored panel, which is used on the facade of the new building, would be used on the front portion. We use halo lit letters for the logo, along with an LED strip lighting to accent the tower at night. And we have also added an analog clock in the similar location to the existing. And then you can see a rendition of what this would look like on the site in the same location as the existing. But like I said, the topography is pulled up to be level. Option 2 takes option 1 one step further towards a sleeker and more modern form by simplifying the triangle shape and plan. This option uses the same fiber cement siding and split face base to match the new building and is only slightly taller than the existing clock tower. There is backlit lettering and logo, as well as strip lighting at the bottom edge of the projected form as an accent. The large analog clock is added to match the new school lettering and to tie in the original tower. And again, this is an option of what it would look like on the site. The third and final option moves away from the triangle form and plan to a similarly sized rectangular form. This option again uses the split face at the base along with 3 colors of fiber cement, unlike the 2 from the previous options. The coastal gray is a color that is added and is used to help add some contrast and interest to the pattern, which is developed, and is somewhat reminiscent of that triangle grid pattern that we saw in the freestanding sign and within the interior graphics of the building. This option uses the halo lit logo. We don't have the letterings, just the logo, as well as an analog clock. And again, this is what it would look like on site with the short end oriented towards the street. So here are your 3 options for consideration. Are there any questions, comments?
So I'll start, right? And to Joel's point, I guess I'm making my pitch right away. To Joel's point, when one of the options that we looked at was refacing the original structure so as to make it consistent with the new design, to me, option 1 doesn't look all that different from if we had just done that, right? It seems like it's very much the same shape and form. It fits with the building. I guess I'm saying I like option 1. I don't know where this discussion is going to go, but that's just throwing my vote out there to start.
If I may, being a traditionalist that I am, and if I can bore you a little bit with some of the history here, but up until 1984, the clock tower really wasn't all that symbolic of towny pride or anything like that, because that all came about with the centennial. And Superintendent Francis designed that centennial logo with the concept of using the clock tower and the shape of it. He massaged it a little bit into the number 1, using the shape. And to go along with what Nate said, I believe that option number 1 comes the closest to that. And we honor East Providence with the EP, the interlocking EPs throughout the building. And those graduates of East Providence High School prior to 1984, that was the symbol of the high school, the interlocking EP. Those after 84, sometimes it's a jump ball or a 50-50. What's the symbol? Is it the clock tower or is it the interlocking EP? But we need to keep the clock tower. We promised there would be a clock tower. And I think option 1 fits the criteria that we're looking for. And it's not in a hole as the original clock tower would have ended up in. I think we need to conceptualize that if the retaining walls have been built, it would have made the original clock tower look stubby. The grade would have been so elevated around it, and it would have been a catch-all for debris and litter. So relocating and this design, I think, is a positive option. And I think Mr. Wagan would like to have some input.
If I could. First of all, I think what everybody's spoken about so far is option number 3 should be thrown out. And if we can all agree with that, I prefer to do that. I think it's too contemporary and non-consistent with the facade of the building and everything else. What I would like to be able to see a little bit bigger than what we currently see is option number 1, which I'm tending toward because I like the way the top of it's articulated. I like the lettering. I like everything else about it. But, and first of all, I want to compliment you on recognizing, we said this early on, that keeping the old clock tower submerged below grade and with retaining walls would not work. We said that, and I'm glad to see that we finally come to that point. Number one and number two, both are pretty reasonable. Frankly, the number one is very simple or simpler than number two. And to me, I am a little bit more traditionalist, my tendency is toward option number one. I really don't have a liking so much for number two as much as I thought I would. And I have a preference for both location as well as design of option number one.
Thank you. And Manny, thank you for adding in, as Bob, mentioned as well, the, that sunken in recessed setup that we had was definitely not what any of us thought was a long-term solution that really spoke to this project. And you mentioned it as a catch-all, which we talked about, right? I mean, it was going to be a mess and a hazard and everything else.
I'd also like to say, Joel, that the location that's been selected, even though it was the original location on the site of the other one, the 1999 clock tower, this is situated much better in comparison to where the school is now versus the old high school. And so that context of being out front and being a clock tower of itself and identifying the entire campus is very, very important. And I think this does it well. I think the architects should be applauded what they did here.
Agree. Any other building committee members?
Joel, I'd like to say something.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I tried to talk before and nobody could hear me.
Oh, yeah, I never heard you.
All right. So I agree, and I'm glad somebody brought it up because I just wanted to make it clear that the existing clock tower cannot remain because it would be buried so deeply in the ground. So I'm glad Manny brought it up as well as Bob, because it wasn't an option to reclad that thing and keep it halfway stuck into the ground. So for whoever else is listening, that's one of the main reasons this was done. Personally, I appreciate one, but I like two. I think we got a new high school. I think we kind of look to the future here, look to keep something from the past, but try to expand upon the look of the high school and look towards the future. I don't object to one. I think two is a little bit better option moving forward. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I'd like to just chime in. I tend to agree with Steve. Being a 1974 graduate, I endorse what Andy said about the interlocking EP being the symbol of East Providence, but I also am a traditionalist, but also see a brand new high school and agree with Steve that we need to look forward into a more, I think number two gives it that, lack of a better word, high-tech appearance. So that's just my 2 cents.
I'd like to speak to this as well. In being in the small group, I like number one. I feel like I am a traditionalist at heart. I do think that number two is more modern. I think that number one represents better the tower that was there, but a very much of an upgrade of the tower. And I love the position that it is in. And as Mr. Reagan said, the distance from the school makes it stand out even more so, but I would vote for.
Next.
Could I ask if can we see a perception of what this would look like from the road? Is there such a thing available? Do we have some schematic or something so that we could see for line of sight, for nothing else. I'm just curious as to driving by on Pawtucket Avenue, what the perception is going to be looking at the building behind this. Well,
In actuality, Manny, you're correct, because this view that we're looking at right now will only be seen by people that are on the sidewalk or in the parking lot across the street and not traveling down Pawtucket Avenue. So it would be wonderful to see the view shed from either north or south direction toward the signs, both options.
yeah.
Kristen, that has signage on both sides of that clock tower, correct? Or is
Correct.
it just the one side?
Correct. This
Okay.
signage would be on the opposite side as well.
Okay. And we talked about this in the meeting about, you know, what does this clock tower want to be, you know, and as we talked about the locations of it. So, you know, it wants to call the school out. So to your point, Manny, you're gonna get a really good indication of this driving up and down the street. You won't have the building as a backdrop because, you know, driving up and down Pawtucket Avenue, you're not going to see the building behind it. You're going to see the building behind it on the approach down, you know, down through the main entry. But I think it's going to call the school out in the proper fashion and do what it's supposed to do, kind of set a precedent here for the school. And the location is great. I agree with you guys. Either way, either option you go with is a good option.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, Manny, just to answer that question, I don't recall seeing, you know, as Steve would describe it, kind of as a drive-by, whereas, you know, if you're driving up Pawtucket Avenue, you know, you'd look at it to read the clock. You're going to basically have, you know, the side properties of the high school property in the backdrop. So I haven't seen like a full rendition, you know, having it dropped into like the virtual or anything like that. Yeah, I think you'd have to basically probably go to, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but go to the original virtual video that was presented with the old clock tower, you know, and you'll get a sense of how it sits behind it. But I'm sure we could probably get one in the near future. But at this point, I think this is the most telling rendition. Question I have is, I know you mentioned that the height of 1 and 2. Well, first of all, I'm gonna weed out at Bob's request. We're gonna weed out 3. I haven't heard anybody speak to 3, so without any objection, we'll officially bump 3 off the table. So that being said, without hearing any objection to that, is there any concern with taking these towers at the same height of the original once we're bringing it up to grade? You know, we don't need any kind of zoning variance or anything of that nature, will we? Okay. I saw you shake no, Tony. You're muted, but I did see the head shake. Okay. So that being said, I'd like to hear the other members speak to preference.
Hey, Joel, can I just ask
Yeah.
2 quick questions?
Please.
Kristen, I didn't hear you say, but will the clock face be lit on both of those options?
Currently, right now, it's shown as no. The lighting would be just the strip lighting and the halo backlighting at the lettering. The clock face would be on both sides in both options, similar to the lettering. But we could certainly look at making those internally lit hashes for the clock sign. I don't think a halo lit would work well, given how small the elements are. In your current clock tower, the clock is not lit, I believe. I believe it's just like a stone.
No. No, that I'm not an architect or a design specialist. That could be a lousy idea for those who are. I'm just thinking in terms of being able to see it at night.
Right. I think the intent was no. At this point, we were not lighting the clock itself.
But as
or
I
the
understand
signage
it, Kristen, what you're doing is you're backlighting the name of the school on the clock tower itself. So
Yeah.
that's illuminated at night.
Yeah, it would be a halo lit on the lettering, similar to how we do the large logo on the school, on the sides of the school.
Is that something that should be emphasized here versus the clock itself as an architectural item, or is it you're really trying to tell people this is East Providence High School as if they don't know it? I'm just questioning why we would be backlighting this sign East Providence High School versus somehow illuminating the clock itself.
Well, it will serve a purpose to what you just said, Bob. I think of identifying the school as you're approaching at night, looking for the property. It will be a lit marquee to lead you to the entrance of the campus at night, in my opinion.
Joel, I agree with you. If
Being too big, too gaudy, too bright, too non-consistent with the wonderful nature and architecture of the building. That's the only thing this is a pretty big sign that says East Providence High School that'd be lit from both directions at night. It becomes pretty much a billboard, as you said. And I'm sure that people want to be able to identify the high school, but would it be considered something a little bit more garish and too bold to be lit by itself, and the clock itself, the clock face, not to be lit, if that's what this structure is all about.
So that there, and it almost looks like a black and white image. So I think the backlit is, that halo, as Kristen said, I think it's soft enough. So, I get, if the letters themselves were lit, then yes, I think it would look, a little.
So the letters themselves are not lit, it's just backlit by a vertical illumination.
Right, you have a strip lighting here, the LED strip lighting, and then it's considered halo light.
Letters.
Right, it's a metal letter, a solid metal letter with a soft glow of halo light behind it that washes the fiber cement behind.
Oh, so the letters themselves are not backlit, they are illuminated from the face by the strip.
Correct.
No, the lettering is backlit.
Oh, it is.
It's a halo light behind the letters. The letters aren't internally illuminated. They're a solid metal with a soft glow of light behind, which is considered a halo lighting. So the soft glow would light the fiber cement behind it, not make the individual letters glow.
So you're essentially, Bob, seeing a silhouette of the letters against the lighting that's behind it.
That could be good, Joel. I just worry about the size of it and the brightness of it. I think you have to be careful that a commercial venture across the street says they got it over there. Why can't we have it on this side? And I think that the quality has to be very carefully determined here as to how much lighting and how bright it is. And at the same time, it's a clock tower that we're not illuminating the clock itself. I do think we have to consider that even if it's a subtle lighting of the clock numbers and the hands or whatever it may be. I like the architectural design of number 1, and number 2 doesn't bother me all that much, but I'm a little bit concerned about how bright and gaudy the light in the sign could be if we're not careful.
Understood.
Can I ask a question too, Joel?
Yeah.
Just quickly. So can we skip forward a couple more? Where that right there, that number 1. Can we go back to the number 1 picture where it's sitting there on the, right there. Is that strip grass or is that planned to be turf?
I believe that's grass.
Grass.
I would imagine it's grass. Are we irrigating? I'm just trying to think about it, drawing attention to the fact that that's brown in July or August. And
I would suspect it's not irrigated, Nate, but Justin, do you know, I mean, for any chips, I would imagine that.
There's no irrigation on the job.
Yeah, no irrigation.
Yep.
So it's brown in July and August.
Yeah. I mean, Nate, unless we look at maybe some, more ground cover type of planting there as opposed to just grass, right? Which would then reduce your maintenance as well. So that's something else we could look at.
Yeah, I mean, the rendering of the landscaping looks beautiful. It's just, it'll look that way for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Nate. It's not going to be the athletic fields will be green. That strip won't be green.
We have a New England seed mix on the job. It's a pretty hardy seed mix when established, once it gets its roots in place. You are going to need some water to maintain it to get it up to where it needs to be, but it's a hardy mix designed for New England.
Yeah, and you do have grass around the site, so it's not like this is the only spot.
The,
Does
Joel, I
chips
said,
negate that at all? Totally, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, man, I just didn't want to lose. I know I said I only had 2 questions, but I guess this kind of leads into a third. Out front of the student parking lot right now, we've got that, I don't know if it's granite or marble, but that sign that's whatever, was the class of 1980, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Do we envision that being anywhere on the campus, or where is that now? Did it come down?
We still have the sign. It's currently in storage behind the CTC building.
Okay, yeah, I'm not saying this is the place for it, certainly, but,
No.
Okay.
That was a class gift of the class of 1982.
Okay,
I
yeah, a
believe.
member of said class reached out to me and said, where is that at?
Yeah, it was either 82 or 83, one of them. It was granite.
So that'll be a second item when we're discussing options for grass or ground coverage around the sign. We can talk about where we're going to put the class of 82 gift.
Joe, with regard to this sign, option 1 and option 2, could we break it into 2 pieces? One would be, does everybody agree with the location of where it's being sited versus the actual design of the clock tower? And I would suggest that we all agree with the location of where it's being sited, its height and everything else like that, to get that off the table so we don't have to worry about that.
I agree. Without objection, I believe we have a consensus on that.
Do we also have a visual for option 2 with this same direction, Kristen? There it is, okay.
So let's see if we can reach a consensus on one
So
or
yeah, I'd like to hear from the other members of the building committee. I'm trying to keep a tally here.
Yeah.
I'd rather not go to a vote, but we will do kind of majority rule, if that's okay.
Come on, Nick, speak up. Nicholas.
I like option 1. Yeah, I think it's the most similar to the to what we presently have. I think AI3 did a great job on really getting what we need as we want here. And yeah, option 1. I mean, I do like option 2, but more traditional, option 1.
Sandy?
I like option 1 also.
Okay. Craig?
I could go either way. So I do like option 2. I think that the clock tower does give homage to the past of the school, but I really like the design of what option 2 brings, and for the modern look of the school. But option 1 is really nice too. So I could go either way.
Oh, make a decision.
I already did. I put him down on 2.
All right.
Joel
Tony.
knows how to count votes.
Usually comes down to single digits, Bob.
Right?
Well, I'll cancel Craig's vote out. I like option number 1.
All right, Tony.
That's it, Tony.
All right, and Ben?
Sorry, I'm having some internet issues, but if you can hear me, I'm going for option 1. I like the nostalgic look better. So much else. So the building is being made modern, but I think it's good to keep, something that is historic.
Sure. Okay. And trying to look at the list. I don't think, did I leave anybody? Oh, Toby.
No, Toby had to go off the meeting.
Okay. All
Can
right.
I vote for him?
No.
Toby told me he liked option 2.
Is that what he said? besides
Kathy, I hope your
Bogey,
class is taking notes.
am I missing anyone?
I don't think so.
All right. And in full disclosure, see, now I could just be like, oh yeah, I was an option 1 guy too. I was an option 2 guy. So, but I will be in the minority, and you know, as I feel is fitting. I think we have very good representation here with stakeholders. So I'm comfortable with going with the majority without, again, any objection to that process. So if there is any objection to that, please speak up. Otherwise, we will move with option 1. I think either one. I mean, I was stuck between 1 and 2 myself, and for the reasons that were stated for each. I will say this, and AI3 has been amazing throughout this process. Looking at option 1, if there's anything different, any adjustments that are, you know, strong concern. I don't want to muddy the waters and get, you know, into the nitpicks of it, but just basic structure. And as an example, I will ask a question to Kristen or Justin. That split face base on option 1. What's the height of that? Because I'm just looking at access to, again, that lighting. Would it make sense if it came up, you know, a couple feet, or maybe it doesn't even aesthetically, you know, frame anything else? But I'll throw that out as my only question on that piece, and it may not even need any attention.
It is currently at the 3'4", similar. So the height of that CMU base, that split face base, comes up to the same as the majority of the base of the building. So that bottom of the light would be 3'4" minimum above your ground.
So it puts the letters at that first letter is roughly what height?
I would say it's probably at least 6 to 7 feet above. Probably closer to 7.
Okay.
Now, it appears to me, and it might be just a rendition, but on option 1, the clock numbers or ticks, whatever you want to call them, they appear to be gray. And the option 2, they appear to be red. Is that
correct? I can go back to option 1. Yes, these were originally designed to be a little bit more similar to the existing, where the clock tower, the clock face itself was the same material and color as its backer. So we did a darker gray here. That, however, if we liked the red clock of option 2 better, that could be used on this option.
Can we have some discussion on that? I think it would be more visually appealing, stand out a little bit more if they were red.
Gene, I agree a little with you. I think if nothing else, they need to be lit. So whether they're black or red,
I
totally agree with
that. Each of the little ticks need to be lit at night. And to Gene's point, the red is kind of cool during the day, you know. So if that maybe brings a little bit more life to it. I do like the design. One other comment I'd like to make is potentially, can you go back to the road view? And Joel's concern about, you know, people being around it. Could we consider a planting bed around this thing? So that, you know, to Nate's point about it not being in the grass, you know, if we do a nice planting bed with some bushes around it, some low kind of growing stuff, maybe it'll kind of keep people away from it a little bit more. I mean, they're going to go in the planting bed, but they're less likely to lean against it if there's a planting bed, as opposed to just the way it is right now, leaning against it, whacking it with your backpack and what else.
I'd also like to add that there's a concern that at some time, some vehicle may run into this for whatever reason. And the base having a planter around it that is actually a planter that is reinforced in a way that protects it would give it some buffer. So if there could be something that would be done with the split face block that would bring it out of it, because this will be hit by someone at some point in time, whether it's accidental or whether it's intentional. The other
You get
option,
those rods that shoot up out
Ever
of
the
there.
optimist.
It'll definitely impact their policy rates, I can tell you that.
the other thing is
But-
that Steve brought up about the lighting of the clock. I agree. I think that if we could, Kristen, if we could see a couple renderings of what this would look like at night when illuminated, if you could do something like that, I think it would show the committee exactly what it is. If we're all deciding on this design with a couple of nuanced changes to the base and maybe to the lighting, I think we're in the right direction.
We can definitely look into that.
Can the lights be like the little ticks just be backlit, or a little LED strip, so that they're just, you know, just really done subtly and nice, and, you know, not gaudy, but just nice, you know, subtle.
Definitely.
The kids can't read the clock anyway, so we're going to put the digital clock up there.
Yeah, right.
One last request from me, Kristen, if when you do the night rendering, if you could do it with a vision from the street, that's distance.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Gene. So it would be like at night when you're driving down Pawtucket Avenue. What does it look like? How's it going to appear? Not only the clock, but the East Providence High School. What's that going to look like? You want to be able to see that in realistic terms, and Kristen can do that.
Of course.
All right, so we have, I'm sorry, Manny, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with all of those proposals, the red ticks and the lighting, and I'd love to see what it looks like at night.
Joel, dumb question, but what does the shadow profile look like behind that thing on the, the shadow will be on the north end, right? Stretching, will it stretch as far as that track back there, or, I mean, my calculus teacher would get ticked off that I can't do that math in my head.
You're speaking to the shadow, what, hitting the infield, or?
Yeah, the shadow would come over there. I don't know how far it's going to go. I mean, if it was on a baseball field, it would be a problem. But the over there, I don't know. There'd be as much.
It all depends on the time of the year. Later in the year, the sun's at a different angle. It's going to be different in the sun. Some of the skies, the sun is high in the sky. Later in the fall and the spring, it's going to be low in the sky. So I don't think it's going to be a detriment to anything.
And that area there
is,
where the cursor is, though, I think that's just walking area. I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Yeah. Isn't
right?
that the cross area to the left?
Yeah. That's the baseball. Kind of the outer edge of the like right field, like right behind first base, kind of sort of. But I don't think it's going to be an issue. All right, so we have, again, without objection, it sounds like we have an agreement on option 1 with the change to go with red components on the clock with backlit, not digits, but minute indicators, or whatever that term is. And then with
I think what we're looking at, Joe, the ticks were going to be the white or red, and we're going to look at options, what it would look like. And the red may actually be the best one, but I think the committee should have the option of looking at that. In other words, the motion is we approve the location, the size, and the design of option number 1. We're going to look at the lighting of the sign and the clock at our next meeting to make a determination what those colors should be.
And we have backlit components of the clock.
Yep.
Is that the again, no formal vote on this one, but without any objection or more discussion or disagreement, that will be the direction for our friends at AI3, which have been amazing. So again, we will then come back eventually to this body with, those design pieces to look at. But I would imagine, and Sam or, the AI3 team, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the same time, we can probably have, some cost factor for us to consider and make the final decision. Because it does have to be a final decision, a financial decision to move in this direction.
Joel, I
just,
would agree.
so-
I know we've started that conversation with Gilbane, but I think we've now we have a firmer direction. We can start to explore that more.
Okay.
What is our timing, Sam? I assume we have the luxury of another month.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Eric, I don't know what conversation we've had with Gilbane so far on this, just that it's kind of pending and out there. It's definitely on our weekly agenda with them in our OAC meetings. So
I would say my timeline is concerning, just for the fact is I know we still need a structural design. We need to finalize the architectural design. That's going to take some time. Then Gilbane's going to need to bring in probably 6 vendors for an item like this, between the site work guy, the framer, the roofer. So we're going to be a little bit of time. So the quicker we can get this approved for a final design, if we're talking finishes like clock face finishes, I would rather have the design team proceed forward with a formal design so we can issue it to Gilbane to get accurate pricing. Because until then, we're basing an order of magnitude based on a verbal discussion rather than actual drawings. And we all know order of magnitudes have a very high risk of coming in anywhere, and we don't know. Even though we do have estimators and a lot of people look at it, I would rather go with get the design done, get the sketches in, and if we need to adjust a clock face color or add some backlighting to it, right, I feel like we can have the provisions in place for that.
So that sounds like that's kind of what we're looking at, right? So if we did that at the next building committee meeting, again, not to assuming that between AI3, I think that's the question, but let's say it's possible. The thought was that the next building committee meeting, we would have that, that cost factor based off of this design, understanding that we can tweak those little details, but we'll at least have the information to vote on a financial decision to construct the new tower or build a retaining wall around the old one.
I don't know if we'll have something to review for a better cost number at next month's meeting. It's going to take some time to get that number. I'm thinking at least 2 months. Once we're probably talking 4 to 6 weeks once we give Gilbane the sketches, because we're changing a lot in this. We're changing the retaining walls. We're changing the topography. There's a lot of factors here.
So, all right. So valid point. So we have that option, right? I guess we're going to look to Eric, your communications with Gilbane and AI3, as far as, we're kind of burning at both ends, right? And I understand that from a time standpoint. So if somewhere in between the May meeting and the June meeting, a decision needs to be made, then we can set up a meeting to make that decision. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir. I think that's a fair statement.
Okay. All right. So that's how we're going to move on this one.
Joel, can I just jump in for a second here? I know I think one thing that we need to make clear is that keeping the existing clock tower isn't free. It has a cost. There's a cost factor that is involved with keeping it, that's in the hundreds of thousands, as is building a new one. So I don't want people to think that we're looking at just spending money. Either option is an expense. We're just looking at the best way to expend the funds. Am I accurate in that assessment?
Yes, and I, sorry about the dog. I would go even a step further. And it may be bold for me to say this, but I feel like this committee understands that it's money. Sorry, that it's money well spent to build a new clock tower. and then it's almost money thrown out to frame, to build a retaining wall around the old one. We
I
just,
agree.
have to, right? So, being responsible, we have to, go through the process so that we can do it officially and appropriately. But yeah, I think it would be a shame to spend that kind of money and still end up with the same clock tower that we have today.
Our whole
But yes, thank
rationale, our whole rationale for building this school was that the expense to, keep the old one for an outdated design that no longer fit with educational, mores and methods, right? It was prohibitively expensive. And we didn't know what was going to happen with that school over time, except that it was going to get worse and more expensive. I mean, I think keeping the old clock tower up at an expense is just going back to the old way of thinking, right? It's completely inconsistent with everything that we've worked hard to do here.
Also, to add to that, it's not the most, it won't be the most attractive thing. It's going to be a third buried in the ground. It's a safety issue. It's a hazard. You're going to have to put railings around those retaining walls to keep, it's a place where kids can hide. There's trash. It's just not something that we're going to want to put out in front of this brand new school. It had its purpose. Now we're just going to replace it with something that's new and more appropriate to the school, as Nate alluded to. And like I said, it's not free to keep the old one.
You have to be financially responsible and aesthetically responsible.
Right. And to that, Manny, I commend this committee for being consistent, in that charge to hold on to the traditional design. And I thank AI3 for doing a great job of pulling that into this design. Exactly what we asked for, I think, is exactly what we were presented. So I appreciate that. All right, that being said, without any other comments to that point, I don't want to overlook anyone.
Nope.
All right, hearing none. I know Kathy's trying to. We will go on to the next item, which Craig, I believe you're up. Is consider and vote to approve the purchase contract for the FF&E.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank
So just a refresher as to how we got to where we are. Quite a few months ago, we started working with ICD, the consulting firm that's working with AI3. ICD has been an integral part of this furniture and equipment RFP process. We started out by bringing in some samples into the small gym at the high school. Staff came down, they tried out the samples, they kicked a few things around. That helped us to develop and frame the RFP that we had out on the market. So we were able to specifically state what it is that we wanted. ICD put together the RFP. That RFP was advertised in the Providence Journal for 3 days for a cost of $4,600 for the legal ads. And as well as it was advertised on other public websites and was spread through word of mouth through all of the contacts that folks have. The way that we approached this was that we broke it apart into phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 were the pieces of furniture that we could access pricing off of the state bid list. We were able not only to use the Rhode Island MPA, but Mass Combis, the Massachusetts State Bidding List, MEC, the Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium, really any other purchasing consortia that we are allowed to purchase from the Rhode Island Attorney General's office. So we did that in phase 1 and sort of had a mini RFP for that. And then for the rest of the pieces of the furniture, that was completed in phase 2. So probably when all was said and done, we probably had about 20 to 24 vendors who had responded from throughout the country. So the lists on the vendor award report that you have before you are for the furniture. We were very pleased to see, particularly from WB Mason, that some of the pricing was quite aggressive, and was the consultants were actually quite shocked at some of the pricing that we received. We were budgeting 2.175 million for this phase, and we are in total coming in at 2.157 under budget. So we're very, very pleased with that. Any questions before I proceed forward? Great.
Craig, just, well, I know Bob has one, and I just want to clarify. So I know you said we're, 2.175 without eliminating anything. I think, you and I spoke earlier, and we basically, everything that we set out to procure.
Everything that was outlined in the RFP that we wanted. Well, and to what I should have explained, once the RFP responses came back, we then outreached to some of the vendors, and we had some other samples that were delivered. Say if there was a cafeteria table, and then the lesser expensive model was. So we were able to really see what the other options were. But in the end, we were really able to come up with every process. To my knowledge, there wasn't any. I know that in the next phase, when we do the equipment, there are some minority. Yep.
Craig, were there any major changes to the stuff we looked at in the gym?
No, none.
Good. So, I mean, I know that the tables in the science room were, something that were really looked over, as well as the teachers' desks to make sure that they were solid. And we went through a bunch of those to look.
Yeah.
So Craig, as a general statement, we're going to be buying as specified, and is it going to be from one vendor?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Craig,
Yes,
just, I know one of the concerns going into this was comfortable that they'll be able to deliver on time for the opening of school.
They are.
And
Yep.
in our window of moving in.
Yes, they are. Yep.
Yep.
They were
Okay.
made well aware.
Great question.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before Craig reads down the list?
And you got 24 responses. You can feel pretty confident that you picked the right price. I mean, that's a really exceptional cross section of the market to get that much response.
Yeah, we had people from really all across the US. So, all right, so starting off at the top, Midwest Technology Products for phase 2, $1,816.27. Monitor Equipment Company Inc., phase 1, $23,439. Phase 2, $89,786 for a grand total of $113,225. RCD Holdings LLC, doing business as School Furnishings, phase 1, $5,627.35. And phase 2, $30,493.98 for a total of $36,121.33. Robert H. Lord, phase 1, $257,205. Phase 2, $65,671.50 for a total of $322,876.50. Sheehan's Office, phase 1, $34,633. Phase 2, $170,969 for a total of $205,602. Sheehan's Office for another portion of the bid for phase 2, $83,048.12. And that's the grand total. WB Mason submitted two bids. The first one, phase one, $81,637. Phase two, $355,796.19 for a total of $437,433.19. WB Mason again, phase one, $626,693.91. And phase two, $330,821.68 for a total of $957,515.59. So the award total that I'm asking for the committee to approve tonight for the total package for the furniture awardings will be $2,157,638.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions or discussion?
Move to approve his recommended awards.
We have a motion by Mr. Wagon. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Oakland. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have all hands up. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay, so motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
that. And I believe it's either going to be you or Sam probably going into the next item, which is our National Grid agreement.
Dan, you want to take this?
I was not planning on it, but I'm happy to do it, Craig.
Oh, you're the best.
So the item before you that I believe was part of the information we shared with Craig is for the final piece of the National Grid work. And if everybody remembers or recalls, when you have Grid bring new services onto the property, there is, depending on the project, potentially a cost that you have to pay for Grid to bring that infrastructure on site. With the electrical, we brought all those services on property at no cost to the owner. So all that was kind of capitalized, amortized through the total, the duration of how long they'll be providing that service to you. However, with gas, we had to bring new service into the CTC building as part of the redevelopment of that older building. So that 61,000 plus or minus is to cover National Grid's costs for that new service that has to come in. That, not totally unexpected. We didn't know exactly what the number was going to be, and we've had that held in the overall budget. We do have a portion of dollars still available in that utility back charge line item that more than covers this. We believe this will be the last expense against that line item. So we will see overall, we'll see general savings from that total.
We have that total, Craig. I'm trying to find it on this document.
$61,813.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Vinatero, second by Mr. Fiola. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
By hand raised.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. And now, Craig, you're going to be up for invoices, if you could, please.
Again, sure. Quite a number this month. It was a busy month. AI3 basic services, $122,474.84. AI3 extra services, $681.80. Gilbane Building Company, $5,922,448.49. Peregrine Group LLC, $59,000. Stephen Turner Inc., $1,913.42. Bilch Engineering, $11,342.50. a reimbursement to the city of East Providence for water, for the water division for the water pickup that they had to pay to the DOT. $1,426.36. The next two items are for the custom computer specialists. These are for the network infrastructure that will be going into the new building. We were required by the school and library divisions to do this with a year and almost a year and a half ago, and which we did. And so custom computer specialist was awarded the bid. This is money that we have already had set aside within the bid. So you'll see the two amounts there. One is for $495,087.96, and the other one is for $32,423.04. Ben, is there anything that you want to add?
Just that, that's our standard schedule for our E-rate funding for network equipment. So we have to bid that in the year prior because we're currently in the fiscal year that started in July of this year going to June. So that's why we bid that last year, and that's part of this project.
And
these are all sorry. Okay, and this is all the additional technology network equipment beyond what we're taking over from the existing high school. So we refreshed the network at the high school 2 years ago because we wanted to, we needed to update everything. All that equipment is coming over to the new building. The new building has a lot more technical, basically a lot more ports, a lot more cameras. So this is the additional components that will fill in the gaps of where we didn't have with the current equipment.
Thank you. I'm sorry. And then
Craig, just a clarification. I'm sorry. On on the East Providence utilities.
Yep.
And I thought I heard you say 1,400,000, but it's 1,400.
$1,426.36.
Okay.
Providence Journal for the legal ads, $4,650.28. And then we started getting some boxes, moving tape, and bubble wrap in. So the next two items for WB Mason, $2,009.49. That's for moving boxes and tape. And then a reimbursement to the school department for some boxes that we had already bought, $3,594.16. So for a total for the month of March 2021, $6,657,052.34.
Any questions or discussion? Mr. Wagan.
Just one, Joel, and it's really for Sam as well as Craig. Sam, is there anything as OPM that you saw in any of these invoices that you would oversee that you disagree with?
No, Bob, as usual, we do a thorough review on all of the invoices that come across. So, the very detailed review we do of Gilbane's, literally page by page that Eric and the team do, as well as all the soft costs that come across as well. So they don't get to Craig unless we've endorsed them.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to put it on the record. And with that, I would move approval of all the awards and payments that have been presented by Craig this evening.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Wagan, second by Mr. Amoroso. All in favor signify by saying aye with the raise of the hand as well on the screen if you could. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. And Sharon, let Craig know if you need backup for, I know you put it in the minutes. Just make sure she's got all of the amounts for each of those. Thank you. Okay. Next item is consider and vote to approve the minutes of our March 8th, 2021 meeting. Any discussion, questions, comments, adjustments? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motions.
Yep.
Motion
I'll
by
second.
Mr. Fiola, second by Mr. Vinatero. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and our next meeting,
Before we go on to that, I have one question.
please.
Bob reminded me of this question. Sam, could you tell me where we're at to date for MWBE participation?
Don't have that offhand, Gene. Eric, do you happen to have that in your vast expanse of your brain?
No, that's a tricky question. Is it you looking for the design team, the total project, or the construction manager?
Overall,
I don't have that number. The one I have readily available is where our construction manager currently sits.
what's the construction manager? What's the participation with the construction?
Their subcontracted amount is 15.9%.
If you
And
could,
our goal is still at 10%, is that correct?
Total project.
Correct, yep.
so if you could get back to us with the total for the next meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Gene, could you explain to Kathy's class what MWBE is?
Sure,
So
M
that- yeah.
standing for minority, W standing for women-owned businesses. It's not the labor force on the project, but the owned businesses, the subcontractors or the vendors owned by minority or women.
We have talked about that. Thank you, Manny.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah,
already.
and we were advised, coming into this that 10% was a monumental feat, and we're positioned well, but we were also told, if I remember correctly, that when we got into the tail end with a lot of the FF&E, it was going to be tough to get that participation, which we saw with this last award of contracts. But great efforts have been made on that. So
That's why
I'm very proud, but
really beef it up at the beginning.
yeah, no, good, good point and timely question. So we'll get that at the next meeting, which I have as May 10th would be the next building committee meeting.
Yeah.
So and what I would like to do in the interest of time, if you don't mind, is go through and introduce the building committee members, and then if any of those members have to leave before we open up to Kathy's class for questions, would that work for you, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll let my co-chair, Mr. Cahoon, Nate.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Thanks for letting me go first because my iPad's about to die and it's not charging. But Nate Cahoon, co-chair, as Joel said. I also sit on the East Providence City Council.
Okay, and then I'm just in no particular order. Ben?
Ben Russell, Director of Technology for the district.
Okay, Gene?
Gene Oakland, former chief purchasing agent for Gilbane, retired.
Sandy?
Very extraordinary.
Sandy Forand, Assistant Superintendent.
Tony?
Tony Fiola, Director of Security and Facilities for the district.
Okay, and Bob?
Bob Wigan, I'm a community member and a former United States Congressman.
Steve? Can't hear you. You unmuted, but it didn't work.
I got it now.
There you go.
I'm a community member and an associate with Vision 3 Architects.
Okay. Manny?
Manny Vinatero, I'm a community member and former superintendent of schools.
Okay. Nick?
Nick Shattuck, president of the Teachers Union here in East Providence, and a teacher at East Providence High School.
Okay, and Sharon, we'll bring you into the mix.
I'm Sharon Corsi, secretary to the superintendent.
Okay, and Eric? Yeah,
You want me? I'm not a building committee member. I'm part of the OPM team.
that's okay. I want to, you guys are critical, folks.
We appreciate that.
And Sam.
Sam Bradner, Parent Group, OPM.
And that's all I have on the screen. Did I miss anyone?
No. Toby
Okay.
Gibbons, principal of the high school, isn't here, and John McNamee is not here this evening.
Okay, so with that, before we adjourn, again, any members that need to, step off for time, but otherwise, if you can hang out and answer some questions from Superintendent Crowley's class.
Right,
The
Mike,
floor is open.
turn on your cameras and your mics. Okay, and if you have any questions you'd like to ask any member of the committee that's with us, please feel free. Who would like to go first? I'm sure there's a lot of questions. Maybe not.
I have a question about the MWBE, because you're looking for at least 10% participation. Is what happens? I mean, I know you said you front load it rather than towards the end. If you just can't find anybody, I mean, are you willing to spend a little bit more in order to get the minority or women-based businesses just to meet some percentage?
Can I take this question, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
So that's a goal set by the Rhode Island Division of Administration through the Division of Purchasing. Specifically, any project, contract, effort, et cetera, that is going to spend state money has to include the WMBE goal and even to the extent that it must be included in state solicitations as an evaluation factor, where folks are given, I don't want to say extra credit, but you can increase your score by having higher participation, and that must be specified in the solicitation when it goes out. So to date, I am unaware of any consequences of not being able to meet that goal, but the DOA is very highly focused on making sure that you're doing everything possible to encourage participation, and they keenly focus on what your results are with regard to your percentage rate.
All right. Adolfo?
I'm sorry, Captain.
Yeah, thank you. So in your discussion about the clock tower and about the flags, there are a lot of details discussed. I was just wondering, did the whole design process look like that? And I'll say that your conversations were very cordial. You seem to be on the same page with a lot of what you talked about. But when designing this, obviously this project was much larger than just clock towers and banners. So like, what did it sound like during this whole process? Thank you.
Wow.
So Sandy, why don't you, do you want to tell them how much time we spent at the AI3 offices doing value engineering, to
That was Sandy's favorite part, Joel.
yeah, it was so Adolfo, it was painful, but always cordial, even in disagreements, right? But I'll defer. I don't know, I don't have Sandy on the screen, but if she's not muted, I definitely, I think from a programming standpoint, I'll say that I think that drove a lot of, that process.
Talk about what the value engineering is, Joel. That's where you have to make, because your official design is way over your budget. So you have to put together for a long period of time, like 2 and 3, 4 hours, and you have to make So Sandy,
essentially, right? So the architects did their job meeting with the administration, but each of the departments and so forth. And I'll let Sandy take that and lead you through that process. She there? No, then I'll go.
I'm here. Right. Sorry,
oh, there you
I
go.
am here. Right. I couldn't get unmuted. And actually, can you just re-ask the question? Sorry, I stepped in for 1 second.
Oh, sure.
I did. I was sitting here the whole time. I had to walk away for a second.
So, I had remarked on how there was a lot of conversation about very specific detail always cordial. And I was just wondering, in designing this whole project, did the process always look like that in terms of the collaboration right down to these details?
So I think for the most part, we always collaborative. We did have disagreements when we were doing the value engineering part. You know, we were in a room for a long time together, multiple days. And I think we all had similar priorities, but we also had things that, you know, one way or another we felt should be included. So that was probably the most difficult part of it was, and we had to make, I can't even remember the number. And that was what?
It was millions.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first one was like $40 million cut.
41.
Yeah.
41.
Okay. So, yeah.
How many times
Yeah.
did we do that? 3? The beginning was easy because I mean, we were pretty much, you know, we had this, we built the Taj Mahal on paper.
Right.
And everybody got everything they wanted. And then we made that first round of cuts, which was easy. It was really when you got to with the third round that it got a lot more difficult. And, you know, that's where we really had to look at the most important features in the building that supported learning.
And Adolfo, you know, to answer that question, right? So we're talking about the architects taking that wish list from everyone involved, all your stakeholders, all your department heads say, okay, this is what we envision. This is what I would like in my room, like every piece. And then they come back to us and say, okay, here's your building. Here's your fixtures. Here's soup to nuts. This is what you asked for. And of course, you know, you kind of hit the floor and then they say, okay, now literally get in a room and using the whiteboard, just jotting things down. What's a go, what's staying, what's a maybe, and again, coordinated by our OPM. I mean, Peregrine did a great job of keeping us structured because it's very overwhelming, but, you know, helping us kind of categorize all of these features with their dollar value, which is still an estimate. And we were, I think we were correct in the way we went into this and being very conservative. So everything was carrying a conservative dollar value. So, you know, if we kept it, it represented a significant amount of money that we felt would cover. And if we removed it, you know, fingers crossed, that's kind of why we are where we are right now, where we removed more than it was actually valued at, but it put some money, you know, on the kind of on the side for us. But it was hours, two or three times a week that we would meet and spend a few hours a day in the office doing that. So it was a process. And like Sandy said, there were like 3 phases to that.
It was kind of, if anyone's ever been on a SALT visit, it's like when it's 10 o'clock at night on that last night and you're still wordsmithing those last few words and you all have to want to use that different word and you know, nobody's letting up at that point. And then finally we just kind of came to some agreement on those last few items, but that was a long process and a difficult one.
And we were lucky because many of the things we removed, we actually were able to put back in at some point in time. My greenhouse was one. It was out there in the parking lot for a very long time until it got put back in. I lost a science lab, so I only have 11 instead of 12 science labs that I wanted. I didn't get that back. But there was that kind of back and forth waiting to see, you know, the monies and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, when you saw the school, you didn't see the slab for the greenhouse that's there. We do have a slab. And that's where the greenhouse is going. But I mean,
don't give it away.
Yeah. What?
They haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's there, the slab. They're kidding me about that. But I mean, those are the kinds of things. And, you know, it is a give and take, and you leave there and saying, oh, you know, but all through the process, even at these meetings, this was an exceptionally long meeting. Usually they might be an hour. Now they may get longer as we get closer to the opening with certain things. The clock tower was something different. We were a long time discussing that because did Manny go off? No, there he is. because that was promised to people early on when we started the project. It was asked, oh, is the clock tower going to stay? And of course we said, oh, of course it is, you know, but you don't realize then that, wow, you know, it doesn't
Yeah,
fit
when
the
you,
design. It may be in the wrong spot. It's going to cost us money. And we had to be very carefully politically, right, Joel, about
yeah.
this. And
But, you know, and that's the thing, right? Like when you're cutting $41 million in that first step,
yeah.
right? I mean, obviously your priorities go to program, you know, and so that's kind of where the clock tower went to the back. And it was always something that we wanted to address. And as Sandy, you know, as Kathy said, you know, public wise, I mean, that was the expectation. So something was staying and it was killing us. The thought of keeping, you know, that 1999 structure there, but we were just trying to do right by all ends. But it's, you know, and as you know, so Sandy didn't get her rooftop garden that she wanted on the fourth floor walkout. And I don't know, we'll have to, maybe we'll get like some potted plants or something. But but you know, to Kathy's point, we're going to I anticipate these meetings to look like this with more items, because now we're in a fortunate position where we can start bringing some of those components back to consider and discuss. But Manny, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to Adolfo that, you know, we have this financial responsibility to the community. They voted to spend $189 million. And we as a committee, more than once publicly, promised that we would deliver the building for less than 189 million, but not a penny more. We cannot go back. I mean, we're stuck. I don't want to say stuck, but that figure is set in stone. So we have to look at those dollars and those meetings, whittling it down to get it under the anticipated factor that we needed, so that we could go to the builder also, because the builder has a commitment with us that I don't know whether you're aware of, where they have to deliver the building for a set price. And if Gilbane doesn't deliver what we want for their price, we do have some built-in protections. So, but the bottom line is that 189 million that we cannot, under any circumstances, go beyond. That's our commitment in blood to the community.
Okay, wait a minute. We haven't adjourned, so we are still live, Joel. You might
Yeah,
want to.
that's okay. No,
Okay.
listen, unless, no, and I think this is great, because these questions, I think, you know, a lot of the members of the community, you know, just don't have an opportunity, or not an opportunity, but the time, don't think to ask them. So, yeah, so if everyone else is okay with asking their questions publicly, I think it's all good information.
We do have a couple hands up.
Yeah,
Michael Hoban.
Mike, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I've got two things that are impressive. One, that someone was able to walk 44,000 steps today is impressive. And the second thing is I've been really impressed with your fiscal responsibility. So my question is that earlier in the meeting, you stated that the building was about 60% complete, but yet you've only used about 22% of the owner's allowance contingency funds. Would you typically see surprises and things that you would need to spend this money on early or later in a construction project? And I think that's a question for people that do this more regularly, because it seems like you have really done well with your contingency funds. And I just wonder about, are you on track? Are you ahead, or are you behind with the use of those kinds of funds?
Sam, are you still on?
Yep. Yeah, sure. Great question, Michael. I think this is the exception from our experience. While we've been lucky to work on some very good projects that have been under budget recently, Barrington's another one, EP now. I would say that we've used a disproportional small amount of those contingency buckets based on where we are to date. Typically, you would see your exposure, especially early on when you're digging, you're basically digging all the holes in the site and then you're putting stuff back in them, right? So you're digging for your foundations, you find stuff that's unsuitable. Where we do have exposure still though is in the demolition and the abatement of the existing building. And what we tried to do is when we realized savings in our buyout of our overall project, we actually set aside some additional funds to cover what we know to be, those exposure risks when we get to that abatement work in the existing building. As you can imagine, schools in your district, same thing, circa 1950s, 1960s, built with, materials that no longer acceptable. So the disposal of those is pretty significant. So I think we have some exposure there, but we've also tried to create these additional buckets of money to protect against those. And I think that's why the committee is able to really evaluate things like the clock tower that got put on the sideline until we knew we were kind of in a good place to start to look at some of these ads or enhancements to furniture or the learning, the kind of the functionality of some of the spaces.
Just want to say Sam has come a long way in his attitude, hasn't he?
Yeah. Bob, I think.
I want to add to this.
Pay me to be conservative.
I've done a lot of different projects, many millions and millions of dollars worth of projects. And it is not always the case that people are as conservative and as frugal with that contingency as we have been. A lot of times they will use that in a way in the beginning to be able to try to get what they want. And at the end of the project, they end up going back to their authority, whether it be a town council, city council, school committee, and asking for more money. This committee has done an extremely good job in monitoring and watching over that pot of money. And that's not always the case in big projects and small projects alike.
Can I real quickly on that question? I swear this is fast. Really, the reason for everything that everybody just said is because of the people on this committee and because of the effort that we put up front in making sure that we had the right people on here for the right reasons. When you do something like this, everybody comes out of the woodwork, whether it's for, political reasons or people just want their name on a plaque or whatever it might be. That is not the makeup of this committee. We have experts in their fields who are committed to doing the school the right way, people who are committed to the community and really just want the project to come out as best that it can, on time, on budget. And that's really the motivation of every single person here. So that's job one. If you're starting up a committee to do that in your own town, that's where you have to start. Get the right people.
And we talked about, thanks for reinforcing that, Nate. We talked about the composition of the committee not being so large that you could never come to a consensus, nor being too small so you don't have the ideas on the table. So we did a wonderful job. I think they have all been just assets to this whole building committee.
Yeah. No, this is it's not a volunteer effort, right? And you look at again, this was a longer meeting, but there were long meetings. So we owe it to each other to to be productive, to be respectful, challenge each other, but we're not just here passing time. Folks don't need to be here. And I think everyone that is here has that mindset to, finish each meeting with more progress. So
the next hand up is Bill Black. Sorry.
Bill Black.
I just had one more comment for Michael. What this committee also did, we set up a subcommittee that meets on a weekly basis, which kind of curtailed longer discussions and brought the important things to the main body. So I think that was an important item.
Yeah, that weekly piece. I mean, there's the efficiency, right? Where we're moving this project along. We're watching dollars on a weekly basis, not on a monthly basis, which has paid dividends.
Which they heard about, and we have our 8 o'clock meeting tomorrow morning. So Bill Black.
All right, thank you. First of all, just to echo what some people said, thank you for the amount of detail and dedication that everyone has to this committee. As someone that wears a lot of hats in this city, as a parent in the district, an employee, just taxpayer. It's really, I appreciate all the effort and detail that goes into it. One question I had was Nate had talked about it earlier, just the building becoming, as we transition to more of a 21st century learning space. How involved does this committee get with teaching and learning? Does it get involved with that? If so, what are some examples? Maybe, I know you have a lot of different members on here. I don't know if that comes up as part of it. Didn't tonight, but I was just curious how that plays into it.
No,
So,
Billy,
I
wait a minute.
go ahead, Kath.
Early on, Bill, we entertained all of the teachers from the high school in meetings, and we had to develop an educational philosophy before doing anything with the structure of the building. So every department from the high school met, and I think it was 3 times, to brainstorm what they expected it to look like, the philosophy of their department. And before we started any of the conversation about the structure. So we do have to do some professional development. In fact, just the other day, I mentioned it to Sandy about, changing some people's philosophy before they go into this building, because it is a very different. And when you go through the structure next week, some of you going next week, some of you going the week after, you're going to see that it is not a traditional high school inside. They have a lot of collaborative spaces in there. And it's be a very different way of teaching. They're going to a block scheduling to accommodate, our career and technical centers. So we still have work to do in that area with professional development.
And Bill, I'll say this as far as, the makeup of the committee though, right? Is everyone understanding what they bring to the table? And when it came to the programming piece, I feel comfortable saying that the members of the building committee that are not involved in the education portion took a step back and basically followed the lead. Again, when we looked at that value engineering piece, where there were components that were weeding out anything that was program related, we kind of let the educational members battle it out and prioritize it, and then bring it forward with what they thought was important. And then we look at the numbers on what it costs and so forth. But the educational pieces, again, I think this committee did a great job of letting Kathy, Sandy, Nick, if it's IT, Ben's, weighing in. If it's, IT needs for the educational program offline, Ben's working with those departments to make sure that he's proposing in his equipment stuff that will meet their program needs. The rest of the building committee is patiently silent and waits for their leads, if that answers that question.
Joel, to touch on that though, as a non-educator, I did sit through an exceptionally long meeting about educational planning at the beginning of this,
Yes.
which I'll never get back, because that was
Yes.
that guy was like all over the place.
Oh, that guy.
But it did show the non-educators everything that goes into what it takes to put together a learning environment. Me from the construction and architecture side just sat and listened. So as Joel said, I only speak up on the things that I know about. So that's what the great thing about this committee is, Nate knows contracts, everybody has something that they can bring to the table, and we all try to allow the people that speak to the items that they know. And it's been really successful, I think, from my end.
That philosophy has to be in stage 1 and stage 2 of your preparation. So this particular educational consultant needed to talk to the building committee, the school committee, the teachers, everybody associated with the project. So I know what Steve is saying.
It's a true government process where there's money being thrown at some folks that, it's like you got to check the box and write the check, pay the bill. But we definitely, our team brought a lot more, programming, educational, solutions to the table, then unfortunately that particular gentleman that we all had to sit through. But yeah,
We had some good ideas. Okay, any more questions?
Yeah, we have a question in the chat from Anne Marie pertaining to as we started the project, were there any thoughts put to renewable energy sources, solar, wind, et cetera, as part of the project?
Sam, I'll let you. Well, so yes is the short answer. We thought about them, but Sam, if you want to speak to that if possible, or
Sure.
Eric.
Yeah, and I think even we've been talking about that a lot more lately as we've realized that we've got funding availability. So as part of the approval process, the building complies with any chips, which is the equivalent if you've used LEED or other kind of building rating systems, or you've seen those in other projects. But it's basically a metric to measure the environmental sustainability of the building. So it's renewable materials, it's solar siting, access to solar, it's being PV ready. So the rooftop of the building has the ability to install a PV array on there at some point in the future. So that means that structurally it's able to accept the load. There are conduits running up and down the building to the key electrical room, and then there's room in that electrical room for future equipment that would be required for PV. Beyond that, there is kind of broader sustainability across the site, stormwater management, other items. But I would say that renewable as a focus, I think, has just really come into play recently with a little bit more attention to it, because both the city and the district have renewable initiatives that they're working on. But I would say that there hasn't been a deep dive into that specifically to see what else we could do on site. PV is the easy thing, especially, canopy, parking lot canopies could be an option because we have a fair amount of parking here. Those come with higher costs and issues that, folks like Tony and his facilities team have to kind of counterbalance with whether they make sense from a plowing and accessibility and everything else. So I don't know if Nate wants to add to that, because I know Nate's had some conversations around that, or if Nate's still.
I think Nate fell off. He fell out of battery life. Yeah.
Any more questions?
So Erica, you had your hand raised. If you still had your question.
I put it down. My comment was, you guys all have jobs outside of here, and this is a long time, and you clearly do a lot of homework before here. I guess my question was for Nick is, do the teachers understand how much work is happening behind the scenes?
Absolutely. They've been intricately a part of this whole thing. I mean, we've had, countless meetings with department heads, members of each department, going through those programming meetings. I want to say there was 3, probably 4 programming meetings for each department where input was taken over the last year to year and a half. So, I mean, they've been an integral part and involved in almost every part of this whole process. And I think you need buy-in. So I think it's important to involve all of the stakeholders from the beginning. And I think that's exactly what we did.
And when you see a crazy lady like your superintendent running through the corridors, opening a closet and saying, "This gotta go, get this stuff out of here." And everybody says, "Oh, stay away from her today." There she goes. So those kinds of things will happen too. Yes, they do know, because it's an all-encompassing process. But luckily, I have a good team. Like Sandy is taking care with Tony of the basic packing of the building. And that's a whole scientific process to pack a building. You have no idea. And they've done a great job with that organization and the preparation of that. That building's practically empty now. And I just gave them a directive to please take all their personal stuff home before April vacation. That all has to be out of there. Well, they not only have that already out of there, they've already packed things in boxes that we had to order, special boxes. So when we meet with the moving company, the person from Gilbane that'll be overseeing the move, everything is in order in the same boxes, and we'll be putting labels. So, a good team doing the various jobs is very important as well.
Eric, I'll add to that kind of, what Nick was saying about having that buy-in. And we understand with this project, we're going to be on such a tight schedule, right? So now there's the anxiety. There's the, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you. Joel, we
So
can
good,
hear.
Joel.
No, now you're muted, Joel. Now you're muted.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You're good.
All right, I'm good. The anxiety of the teachers, my AirPods just died, of moving into that building. And they know that it's going to be a different layout. So we just started, while you guys have, in the next few weeks are going to see it, we just started bringing building staff through the building. It's early, right? But there's enough of it. And the idea, and we'll continue that, is to ease some of that, because we need them bought in, we need them comfortable. It's going to take a team effort, because, when we open the doors, we have students to welcome that are also going to be anxious. So this is everyone's building. And, they gave their input. They want to see how much of their input, will come to a realization. And we want to be able to show them and keep them excited, but keep them comfortable as well. So that's a phase, as we start to get closer to the end, we're going to do that more and more.
So I don't want to, whoops. Is there anything else? I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you for attending the building committee meeting. I'll be in touch this week to let you know the requirements for coming next Monday, and those same requirements for the following Monday for those of you that can't make it this Monday. So we'll be in touch. I hope this was beneficial for you all. And if you have any other questions next time we meet, you certainly can ask them as you're going through the tour. Okay? All right.
Thanks for joining the meeting, folks.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from, was that Ben?
Yep.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Fiola. All in favor,